So my name is Kristen Friedlich, and I'm from the Pennington Public Library. And today, in conjunction with Hopewell Valley's Green Week, we are presenting small space gardening with Anthony Bracco. And we are going to discuss everything you need to know to start and manage your garden in a small space. Now that the weather's finally taken a turn for spring, I think we're officially in spring now. This is the perfect timing for this kind of a talk. Okay, a few things before we get started today. If you have any questions during the program, please write them in the Q&A section and I will relay them to our presenter. And all other comments or questions that you have for me can be placed in the chat window. All right, so now I'd like to introduce our presenter. So Anthony Bracco owns and operates Bracco Farms, which is a small family farm in the Black Dirt region of Pine Island, New York. He uses sustainable farming techniques to grow clean, pure produce that is a favorite among chefs. During the coronavirus pandemic, he also began teaching others about self-sufficiency via gardening, as issues of food safety, food security, and supply chain became an important priority for everyone. Anthony lives with his family in Cedar Grove, New Jersey. All right, so thank you for joining us today, Anthony. I am very excited to have you today.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Thank you all for coming today. It turned out to be a beautiful day. They said rain, but it didn't happen. So there's still ton of time to get out there and maybe garden after we have our talk. Small space gardening. So today what I'm going to talk about is if you don't have a traditional backyard in an area where you can really set up raised beds and set up what you need to grow, whether it's open plan raised beds or terracing, whatever, you can still have the same amount of fun, same amount of, you can get tremendous yields, even in a small space, whether it's on a balcony, a patio, a deck, a veranda, or even a small little area alongside a condo, it can be done. So, and it can be done, and it can be quite fulfilling. And I always tell people, just because you don't have the backyard space or the side yard space to do it, doesn't mean it's not as valuable as if you did. So what I like to do is I divide the talk into three parts. First part, I go over seed sourcing, how to prepare the soil, test soil, and because soil and seeds are going to be the two most important components. So we'll go over that, where to get the seed, safe places that are non-GMO, not dangerous, any kind of chemicals used or anything. So we're going to go over that. Then the second thing I will do, part two will be, I'll show different samples of small space gardens. Then number three, we'll show some of the tools that are used in a small space garden, hand tools. And then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So I'm going to share my screen now. Sourcing. We're going to talk about seed sourcing first, because that's like number one. Where do we get our seeds from? So I have handouts. I have to just prepare this. Okay. Now, these companies here, before I started the farm, I didn't know that any of these companies even existed. But I learned through the Farm Ag Extension Department of Cornell University, for the USDA service there. And I learned from other farmers where they get all their stuff from. Now, this is nothing to be intimidated by, because all these sources here, whether you need just a packet of seeds or you need 100-pound bag of seeds, they can help you. And buying a packet or a small amount is no more costly than going to Home Depot or any box store to get them. The only difference is, what I like with seed sourcing from here is, the most important thing when you have seeds is the germination rate. You want to know, when you buy X amount of seeds, how many should I expect to come up? There's nothing more disappointing than when you start your garden, you put some seeds in, and then a week later or 2 weeks later, nothing came up yet. And then you have to start again, because time is important, especially where we live. We only have a 6-month window. So you want to make sure that everything's going to come up. Otherwise, you lost that 2 weeks and you can't get that time back. But they'll tell you the germination rate. Like if you buy 100 seeds of zucchini, they'll say expect 95% of them to come up. So you know you're in good hands right off the bat. And these sources here, I'm sure maybe some of you have heard of them, especially seed source company like Johnny Seeds. It's probably the most popular one out there. They grow for gardeners, recreational gardeners, as well as commercial growers. And their seeds selection is tremendous. Germination rate, I can't say enough about them. They're really, really good. There's a few others. High Mowing is equally as good. Johnny's is in Maine and High Mowing's in Vermont. For gardeners, I would recommend the most for backyard gardeners and small space gardeners, Seed Savers Organization. That's one of my favorites. Seed Savers Organization is an outfit where they get seed from all over the world, but they can trace the lineage back, some cases, hundreds of years. So they'll get rare things as well as common varieties. They'll get rare varieties. For example, if there's a variety of tomato, for let's say a Roma or San Marzano tomato to grow to make sauce with, and you look up a particular variety in the catalog, and it'll say, oh, this variety was first developed in Italy in this small town in 1780 something, and it's made its way over the years to the New World. And they've kept it, they keep it going by just breeding and growing them for seed production. So they save all the seed. So you'll have generations that can go all the way back. And they'll do it, seeds that come from Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, South America. And they have a lot of varieties, and it's a great organization. You can join it. I think it's $30 or $40 a year. And you get a magazine, you get a book, a catalog of all what they have in inventory. So it's really, really good. And they give a lot of tips on how to do it. There's other ones too, Fedco, Hudson Valley. I don't want to dwell on all of these, but they're all good. If you like to grow onions and you want to grow shallots and onions and leeks, Dixondale Farms in Texas is the place to get them. You can get the bulbs, you can get the seed, or you can get live seedlings sent to you. But they'll sell you live seedlings by the bunch, 70 in a bunch. I think it's maybe $20. And I always like starting onions. I don't like starting onions from seed because it can be hit and miss, a little fussy to start. I usually like bulbs, or I like seedlings. So that's the way to go. And that's the place to go to get them. They have tremendous varieties, and they send you the plants overnight. So they're packed really nicely. So this way they're moist. You take them out, then you just pop them in your little beds. Harris Seeds. There's two companies I put at the bottom of the sheet, which is Nolt's Produce Supplies, which is where you can get tools, and you can get tomato stakes and tomato cages, twine, all kinds of baskets and pots, anything you need for your garden, whether it's a farm, a garden, whatever. Their pricing is very good, and their selection is excellent. Grower Supply is another company. They're in Connecticut. Nolt's is in Amish country out in New Holland. Grower Supply is a larger company. They have more variety when it comes to pots, and if you wanted to do some miniature greenhouses or large greenhousing, or if you wanted to have some external lights, for example, UV lights, because one of the problems with small space gardening, a lot of times you're locked into where, if you're on the north side of a building and you can only grow on that balcony, you're not going to get a lot of sun, which we're going to talk about next. So you may have to use some grow lights to augment the sunlight. So that's that one. So then now that we have that one done, let's go to the next slide. What I like to also talk about is what to grow. And I always emphasize this for beginning gardeners, small space gardeners, is sun and shade crops. And what I did, I put together a sheet. It's by no means a complete sheet. There's a lot more. I just took the most common things, because this will be more. This is where a small space garden has to pay more attention, because, like I say, you're relegated to where you can grow. So full sun are on the left column, partial shades on the right. Unfortunately or fortunately, things that we like the most tend to be full sun. We like our peppers, and we like our tomatoes and melons and cucumbers and eggplant, but they really like a lot of sun. What's full sun? Full sun, 6 hours or more a day. So if you give them that kind of conditions, then you'll get tremendous yields. Partial shade tend to be more of leafy greens or root crops. So you'll have to deal with growing more spinach or Swiss chard or mustard greens, lettuce, things of that type, kale, collard greens, broccoli. You can do that too. Beets, they'll grow in partial shade. Partial shade is maybe like 2 hours of sunlight a day or less. And so you may have to do something where, and grow lights these days are not that expensive. They're very cheap, and especially now with the advent of LEDs. So you can do that too. So this is a list. Again, like I said, it's not a complete list. I just took the most popular things. There are a lot more varieties that you can get. Another thing people always ask me is perennials. Are there perennial vegetables? Because most vegetables tend to be annuals. They grow, they give their fruit, and then they die. But there are a few vegetables that are perennials. Not many, and they're kind of offbeat. There are things like artichokes and asparagus are perennials. It takes a few years to get an asparagus crop, but once you do, it'll just keep yielding. Some types of broccoli, very different, like a 9-star purple cape, which is not your run-of-the-mill broccoli. Spinach, New Zealand tends to be the one that will overwinter, and you'll get crops because spinach is cold tolerant to a point, but after that it'll die. But with types like New Zealand, it'll be strong enough to withstand it. Sweet potatoes, as long as you leave one of the tubers in the ground, you'll keep getting sweet potatoes. Watercress, yams, the same thing. Herbs, mostly 99% of your herbs are perennials. They just come back every year. What we like to do at the farm is we cut them back at the end of the year, get rid of all the dead branches and leaves, and then in the spring they come back up again. So most of your herbs will be perennials. Same thing with fruit. Fruit are perennials because most of the time they're trees. But you do have bushes, and such as the raspberry bush and strawberries. Strawberries will typically last 5 years before they start to give out, and then you have to replant them because then they'll start to produce less and less. But blackberries, huckleberries, all those are bushes. The thing with raspberries is they really will keep spreading, so you have to really kind of keep them reined in, especially in a small space. You'll have to do a lot of cutting. And then, of course, your apples and your cherries and peaches and pears, they're all trees, so they will come back. And small space growers can get dwarf trees and put them in large pots, 5-gallon pails, and they'll do great. The trees will be small, but the fruit will be regular size. The fruit isn't going to be dwarfed, but the plants will be themselves. So that's another question we always are asked, and I try to answer as much as I can. Then we have mid-season crops. The nice thing about mid-season crops is if you're growing something that you really like, there's no reason why you can't get two crops a year out of it. For example, squash. Well, small space, it's not that easy to grow squash, but I'll use it as an example. So squash, you plant them in May or June. Then by July, they're already starting to give out because they've given all their fruit, they've produced their flowers. Then, so at the beginning of July, I'd start a second crop. So this way, within 60 days, I already have a next one. And you can do that with things like turnips and kale and carrots. Carrots, you can just do succession planting all season long. Broccoli, the same thing. Start a bunch of broccoli in May, then start broccoli again the beginning of July, because then you have all of August and September. It takes 60 to 70 days to get a second crop. So you can do that. And we are in zone 7, so your frost dates are going to be between October 1st and the 10th, usually of October in zone 7. And there are things that'll survive a first frost. Kale, there'll be no problem. Collard greens, no problem. Cabbage will survive it. Brussels sprouts like the cold, they'll actually get better. Broccoli too, beets, things like sweet corn will not. Swiss chard will to a certain point. Spinach, yeah, absolutely. Spinach will go till it really gets cold. So you can really get a lot of spinach. But cucumbers are not cold tolerant at all. So that's another thing to look for. Then I talk about companion planting, and companion planting works really well in a small space because you're kind of like modular. If you're growing things in pots and trays and pails, you can kind of move them around, which makes it a little easier than if everything's planted in rows, it's got to stay there. So for example, if you're growing a 5-gallon pail with tomatoes in it, put a pail or a tray or a box or whatever you're growing of carrots next to it. They kind of feed off each other. Some give off nitrogen, some oxygen, so they kind of help each other. They don't have to be on top of each other, but they should be near each other so they can work together. If you're planting in a traditional garden, you do a row of tomatoes, then maybe a foot to 18 inches away, you do a row of carrots, and on the other side, you can do a row of onions. So they all kind of work together. And this, again, by no means a complete list. It's just a working list to get you going. I tried to pick the most common things that gardeners will grow, that through my experience of being a gardener myself before I was a farmer and of talking to everyone else. You want to start off with the easy things first and things that are tried and true. Then you can experiment with more exotic varieties of vegetables and fruit and things like that once you get a little more seasoned in it. So those are those things. Then I would like to talk about, let me see here. We did spoil sizes. I have a sheet now that's really meant for, I'm going to make a new sheet for this. Why do I show this one? This one is, when I had designed my garden before I had the farm, I had 4 foot by 8 foot by 10-inch raised beds in my yard. What happened was where we were, it was all clay. So you dug down maybe 1 inch or 2 and you hit clay, and you can't grow much in clay. So I had to start from scratch. So I said, I went online, I researched everything, and I said, I'm going to come up with starting with a fresh bunch of soil that I can develop and augment with compost every year. So I came up with this mix, and it was enough by doing mathematical calculations and how much of this and how much of that to add, where this came up, where 8 bags of topsoil, 3 of compost, 1 bag of cow manure, and 3 cubic feet of peat moss, which was enough to fill a bed. So why am I showing this? It's kind of a lot if we're doing small space. Well, what you want to do is, if you're going to be filling a lot of trays and bins and pails and vases with soil, make one big batch first, as big as you can, whether it's in a wheelbarrow, if you have a small, like a cement tray or whatever you may have, that you can mix things in. And you don't have to mix this much. You could maybe cut it by half or 1/4. This way, when you make your soil mix, you have soil that's the same soil going into every box and every pail and every tray and whatever you're planting in. So it's all on the same page. The soil is of all the same quality. And what I recommend when you do too is when you make your soil mix, and if you're using existing soil that you have access to, what you want to do is you want to test it. So I recommend this test kit here, which I'll make available. I'll send the link to. It's like $20. It's called a rapid soil test. What it does is it tests for the alkalinity or acidity of the soil, any depletions of essential minerals. You just add a little water with the soil in one of these little trays here, and then wherever the color turns, we put like a tablet in it, and wherever it turns, it tells you if your soil is surplus, sufficient, adequate, deficient, and depleted. So then you'll know what you can do from there, which you can add a little bit of fertilizer to it. And so that's what we have there. Now, fertilizing, there is, let me talk about the crop pH chart first. Why do we do that? Because if we look at this chart here, we can see that anything in the green area is where the vegetables like to be, because that's the perfect balance between acidic and alkalinity. If the soil has too much acid, you have to add some lime. If it has too much alkalinity, then you have to add some sulfur to break it up. But if you could see by the chart where everything likes to be, vegetables like to be in that 4, 5, up to 9 range, and that's good. But fortunately, where we live in northern New Jersey, central New Jersey, Hudson Valley, where the farm is, we all tend to have really good soil. It's good. That's why the settlers, when they first came here, the Hudson Valley was one, and out by down in Pennington, that area, the soil was very good, and that's why they cleared a lot of the land and they grew uh, hay and corn and everything there because the soil was of good quality. It's left over from the glaciers and during the glacial period. So we are pretty fortunate. Unfortunately, with development and cities and roads, a lot of that has been disturbed. So you don't really know what you're getting, So that's why if you can start off fresh with your small space garden by starting off with new soil, then you know what you're getting, and this will help you. And then what you want to do is let me see what else I have here to talk. Is preparation. What I have a great thing. I picked this up from one of the ag extension services in New Jersey. Ag extension is part of the USDA, where they help farmers and gardeners if there's problem with pests or problems with any diseases that plants may have on a farm or in a garden. You call the office and they will help you. And every county has their own agent. So in New Jersey, you're lucky down by where you are. Rutgers is right nearby, and that's Cook College. That's who you would call. And they have their wealth of information. You go to the website in Cook College and the Ag Extension, they'll have publications on any kind of problems that you may have, pests, bugs, whatever's wrong with the soil, blight, mold, mildew. They have an answer for everything. And if you can't get it with the publications they have, you can get a person and they'll help you. So this I picked up and I just reprinted it so I could add it to our handouts. If you read this, we don't have to go through the whole thing because otherwise we'll spend a lot of time on it. But if you follow these, whether your garden is in the ground or in pots and pails, it's the same thing. So you just read this: soil conditions, soil testing. You go through this types, how to prepare for spring. It's a very good document. So I will include this for you also, so you can follow that. There are a lot of publications out there, which I put together a nice bunch of publications that I found, and they're available in a lot of bookstores and online and Amazon. There are a lot of books for small space gardeners, and they're all really great. I've checked out most of these. Small space vegetable gardens, small space ideas, pocket gardens, excellent book. Grow all you can eat in 3 square feet. I don't know how true that is, but you can grow a lot in 3 square feet. Big ideas for small spaces. All the books. The Balcony Gardener, excellent. Magazines. There are a couple of magazines, but the magazines will tend to be online. They're not really in print. I haven't found any yet that are in print, but they will have an online version, and you may have to subscribe to it. But the information in there is excellent. You can really have a lot of fun with the small space. So I want to see if there's anything else I missed. As far as fertilizing, and I do have a couple of documents that I'm not going to really spend a lot of time going over them, but because we are on a constraint. But this is the homeowner's guide to fertilizer. In the event that your soil is depleted and you need some sort of fertilizer, this tells you basically how to use it, how to apply it, whether it's in a small area or big area. You only need to buy, you don't need to have a 50-pound bag here. You don't really need that. You need maybe a 5-pound bag. And I always recommend a natural fertilizer. Do not use Miracle Grow. Only use Miracle Grow on ornamentals where you're not planning on growing vegetables or anything edible. It's all synthetic. It does more damage to the soil than good. It'll deplete the soil. Then you'll have to add more natural fertilizer later. Start with a basic, what they call 10-10-10, which is 10% nitrogen, potash, and phosphates. And the rest is just an inert binder to hold it all together. And a 5-pound bag will probably last you for years. You just add it sparingly, test your soil, see if everything's good. You want everything in balance. Everything's in balance, everything's going to grow great. So that's what we have from here. So now that we've talked about, there are other ones. There's another one here. I'll just show it briefly. This one's very good. This one describes 3 pages of the most common vegetables, how to apply it. They have a 3rd page on how to, what they call, when you apply, there's a term for applying fertilizer, you dress, it's called dressing. Either side dress, which you put alongside, or you dress it right into the actual plants itself. So those are things that you can do. There are two companies I recommend that have 2 products. One's called for the small garden bumper crop, which is organic soil builder. You can buy a bag of that at any garden center. We use that at the farm sometimes when helps give the little seedlings a boost when we're doing our transplanting. And there's another one called Biotone. That's more for a long-term plant starter. This is excellent. So if you're planting your tomato plants in your pot or wherever you're doing it, when you dig the hole to put your plant in, just take a little pinch of little Biotone, throw it in there, and put the plant in, and it gives it a great start. And these are all natural, all organic plant food. One more thing before we do it, we can talk about composting. I do have a PDF on that too. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but definitely if you can start a compost pile in your small space by using a 5-gallon pail or whatever, or a little box, whatever you can do. These are things that what to compost, what not to compost, the benefits, and how to do it at home, backyard, and so on. Very simple to follow. And it's always good to add your own compost because you can constantly do a little bit at a time, and you're just putting back in the soil what the plant took out of the soil. So it's excellent. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to show samples of small space gardens. And I'm going to start with this one.
And Anthony, we did have one question just
Yeah.
asking if you are starting a new raised bed, what if you should put anything down as a weed barrier first? Like I know some people have used like cardboard or newspaper or weed barrier.
Yeah, they have like they have a cloth that you can get. I think I had a sample of it. It's like a garden cloth that actually breathes. You can put that down. Now, the only thing is when you put that down is make sure you go deep enough, especially if you're going to be planting. It's not so critical if you're planting tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, but if you're planting carrots and turnips, things that want to go deep, they're going to hit that barrier unless you go deep enough. Then it's going to compress the carrots and they're not going to grow correctly. So make sure it's at least down about, if you're going to do that, make sure it's down about 1 foot. Unless you're planting, like I said, shallow crops like tomatoes and peppers and eggplant, lettuces, then you don't have to worry about it. But yes, in our greenhouse, we put down this, it's like a gardener's cloth, they call it. And it's porous so the water can get through it, but it keeps it's a nice weed block and it doesn't deteriorate. It lasts for years. So you can do that.
All right, thank you.
So the first picture I'm showing this is a lot of people in small spaces. They don't really have a lot of room horizontally. So what do you do if you don't have room horizontally? You can go up, and you can go up as high as you can reach, or if you have a ladder, go up higher. But you can buy these things in garden centers. I like this shelving because you can do ornamentals, which are just flowers, or you can do a combination of ornamentals and herbs. The only drawback with some of these are the lower shelves. The top one is where you put the things that grow the tallest. It's going to be kind of stunted if they're going to be hitting the shelf on top of it. That's what I don't like about it, some of it. But then again, grow herbs in there because herbs don't grow that tall. So if you're growing basil, if you're growing rosemary or oregano, it doesn't grow so high because you're going to be cutting it anyway to be taking it all season long. So that's one way to go. Then we have this one. I really like this picture, even though it's really nice. It's a little ornate, and you'd have to have a wall or something where you could actually hang the shelf on. But if you do, it's a great way to look at the yield. You have 3 boxes there. They're not really that large, but looks like they have lettuces growing there, scallions, some herbs, even some looks like some ornamentals. looks like basil's in there, sage. So you can do a lot. The two left boxes are definitely different. Almost looks like a bib lettuce growing there. So you can do that too. So that's another way to go. Then we have this one I liked. I just picked these because I like them. Looks like they took an old fence and put it up vertically and then made these like nice little plant hangers to hold on. And again, it's a lot of ornamental, but I picked it because you can just put herbs and you can just put anything in there. And I like what they did on by the railing. They put like fish netting, keeps the birds out. So that's a great idea. And it doesn't block any light and it doesn't look ugly. It has a nice look to it. So you can do that to keep the squirrels or whatever out too. Then we have, let me show you the sample here. I like this one too, because why? Pallet gardening has become a really, really big thing. You can get pallets pretty much at any garden center, or you can get them at any tile place. A lot of times they're giving them away. And if you buy them, I think they may only cost like $5 a piece because they want to get rid of them. Especially once they start to wear out. But that doesn't matter because you're not going to be using it to support a lot of weight. You're using it for its aesthetic. And this one, what they did I'll show a couple other ideas. This one, they have it vertically and they have the hanging pots from it. And it gives it a really nice rustic look. And you don't have to worry about the wood itself. The wood is not treated. It's just basic pine. It's the cheapest wood that they can get because it's only meant for limited time use. So pallets are good. And then I'll show you if you have room to do it on the horizontally, you can take a pallet and do that by putting sides on it and maybe adding a bottom. You can grow in rows inside the pallet. And the nice thing about each other board, the boards become weed block. So you're blocking weeds from coming up where in between your rows. So you're making it nice and clean and easy to work with, and you're making it easy to harvest. This garden here is really nice, a series of lettuces. It looks like here that's going to be broccoli, and then next to it, it almost looks like parsley they have growing there. So you can do that too. And it's really a nice thing about these pallets are it's modular. So if you have it in one spot, you don't like it there, you can move it somewhere else. And they come in different sizes. So if you can find small pallets, large ones, you can somebody stack them. There's a lot you can do with that too. Here's a nice one. I like this picture. This one's a lot of lettuces. And they put tar paper on it too to give it some sort of weatherability. But that's okay because you let it stay rustic. It'll last years anyway, even without any treatment. But again, this is all different types of lettuces. And the nice thing about it is if you cut the lettuces a couple of inches, in a few weeks, those lettuces will all be back again anyway. So it's a nice way to have a lettuce all summer, if you like lettuces and things of that type. Then we have, let's see what's next. Here's another one using boards to make a shelving and to make little boxes and this one I like because it seems to be like a barrier between your property, let's say, and a lot of times on balconies and verandas, you have a separator between the person next to you. If you share the same balcony in different apartments, you can use this as a barrier between, or a privacy screen, except it's a living privacy screen. And if you're on good relations with your neighbor, they'll probably be picking from the other side. So it's really easy. These are easy to make. They have, especially when you go to home, I know lumber's expensive these days, but you get rough cut boards and they have them in Home Depot. Rough cut, they're very rough. They're not finished. And they're very, very, even today, they're still pretty inexpensive. So you can get those, cut them and just nail them, screw them together. And make something like this, or have someone make it for you. And in some cases, you can even buy things already done, especially at garden centers. A lot of garden centers have really some good choices. Here, these are looks like old wine boxes, and you can just stack them. And I like what they did, kind of like a checkerboard effect. And again, it can even be a privacy screen. and you can go up as high as you want. And look at the yield that you can get here. You can imagine this being anything in there. It could be radishes, it could be turnips, it could be basil, it can be the topper ones where things grow taller. You could actually put some tomato plants, pepper plants in those so they grow nice and tall. Peppers only grow to a determinate size anyway. So you have two kinds of crops. You have indeterminate and determinate, especially in tomatoes. Determinate tomatoes will be your regular hybrids. They'll come to a certain size, maybe 2 or 3 feet, then they stop growing. It's the heirlooms and the cherry tomatoes that are indeterminate. They'll just keep growing. You have to keep cutting them back. So when you order your tomatoes, one of the things to look for is it determinate. Things like bush beans and wax beans, they're determinate because they only grow to a certain size. They're not vines, and they'll grow. You'll get a tremendous yield out of them too. Peppers are determinate. They only grow to a certain size. Same thing with eggplant, 2.5 feet. That's about it. So imagine those in the top rows. They'll do very well. Let's see what we have. This one here, I saw this one. I thought this was good. I actually seen this at one of the garden centers here in Cedar Grove Garden Center. They had something similar to this. And if you look at this person's just growing herbs in there. It's like the first 2 rows are your green basil, and then you have your purple basil. Looks like rosemary, and then it looks like sage on top. So if you really want to get your herbs, and I really suggest growing herbs because you can preserve, you can dry them, you'll have them all year long. We do that here. Well, my wife will dry everything out. And the same thing with if you're growing tomatoes, you can pickle, you can jar, you can can. So you can enjoy it the rest of the year. Let's see what we have here. This one, I know this is mostly ornamentals, but this gives you an idea. Imagine instead of flowers, just different types of crops, especially on the hangers. The hangers, you can do lots of lettuces. You could actually do a tomato plant or 2 in that one box. It's pretty big. You can imagine these as dwarf trees over where the cat is. And you can have some ornamentals splashed in between just to give it some color and things like if you plant marigolds and things of that type, they'll actually deter pests, insects from coming and bothering your crops. This will be more of a deterrent. Then we have here, this one I picked because even though, again, it's mostly ornamentals, but if you can imagine the big vases there, you can have a tomato plant in each one of those, or a pepper plant, or an eggplant. And then in the other ones, you could do lettuces, you could do carrots, or you could do rows of things. So you can imagine in the big one in the front here, you could have dwarf trees. The thing with trees is you got to protect the root ball. So in the winter, you may have to wrap something just around the root. You don't have to worry about the stem or anything, because you know what's happening when it's in a vase like that. It's getting the cold air is all around it. If it's in the ground is protecting it a lot. It's only going to freeze to a certain point if it does. But when you're in a pot, it's going to freeze all the way around. So you may have to either A, bring it indoors, put it in the garage or whatever, or B, wrap it with some insulation or carpeting, something to prevent the root ball from freezing. Let's go to the next one. This one's a nice example of a crop garden on a balcony. They have all their lettuces in those long boxes, rows of tomato plants, a dwarf fruit tree. It looks like in the foreground, it looks like strawberries. So you can get a nice yield out of this little garden. You can get an amazing yield. So again, it's just, you're only limited by your imagination. Use the small space to your advantage. This one I picked too because I like, even though it's mostly flowers and everything, you can imagine all on the outside, on the railing and everything. You could do all kinds of plants, all kinds of veggies, and you still have an area to have your breakfast in the morning, or just go out for a cup of coffee and enjoy your bounty. Let's see what we have here. And then there's the old standby, the 5-gallon pail. I think it's the most prolific thing in Western society is the 5-gallon pail. And it does have good uses, especially when it comes to garden. They're not the most aesthetic things. You can paint them, you can dress them up a little bit, but functionality, they're great. For each one of those, you could put things that grow large, like I put one tomato in each one, or one pepper, one eggplant, you could put broccoli. You could actually put lettuces, but I think it's kind of a waste of space because they're so deep. You want to do something that where the roots can really expand, and plants like tomatoes and such. You could actually, people do potatoes in those, and they come out great. Potatoes, you want to use a lot of loose material, mix peat moss and leaves and grass, and put a little soil, and put the potato cutting in there. You'll get tremendous amounts of potatoes. And this one, it's functional. They have 3 tiers. This would be a garden that would give you a lot of yield. You don't have to go 3 tiers. You can go 2 or you can go 1. I think I have a picture with, yeah, this one is a little bit more ornate. They kind of painted the wood, and they have used these orange ones and some buckets. So again, look, these are all tomato plants in them, and I don't know I can't tell what the top ones are. You could do things, if you want things that climb, like cucumbers and stuff, you just have to put some trellising. You may have to get some chicken wire and be creative. And even tomato cages would help the cucumbers grow up. The only thing that doesn't really work in a small space, I would say, is zucchini, because they take up so much room. One plant, it will become at least 3 feet in circumference. So they need room between them too. So it'd be really hard to do a zucchini. Then you have something like this where you can buy a planter and put the 4 buckets in the planter. And then once the crops start coming up, you're not going to see the buckets anyway. Makes it more easier to move rather than filling those planters with soil. An easier way is just taking the buckets out, moving it, and if you have to move them around. But they are nice. That's a nice way to go too. And here's a typical way of somebody showing a garden using the 5-gallon pails and using some nice plastic trays. It looks like they have a lot of different lettuces, some spinach, things of that type growing in there. So again, you can do that too. Let's see, what do we have next? This one I like.
Sorry, we had another quick question.
Sure.
If somebody wanted to get to do a container with carrots or tomatoes, how deep would the soil need to be in that container?
Well, the carrots will need to be deeper. The carrots, you want to have a foot, at least a foot, because they're going to go down. The tomato plants, not so much. The tomato plants maybe 8 inches or so. The roots spread out. They need to be wider because the tomato plant roots will go out and they'll go down. So from my experience, the tomato plant roots maybe go down 6 or 8 inches, but they may spread out about 6 or 8 inches too. So that's why I put 1 tomato plant in a 5-gallon pail. And then I would put a bunch of carrots. I would do the same thing. If you can find something that's pretty deep, carrots like to go down. Because we grow them in our greenhouse, and I know if we had to take weed block out of some of the boxes because the carrots were hitting it and the carrots were getting stunted. So we had to remove that. And then you want to use soft material too, where when you grow carrots, you want to put a lot of peat moss, some sand, things to keep the soil loose. Same thing with potatoes. You want to keep the soil loose. Definitely for carrots and turnips and daikon radishes, they're going to go deep. So I'd say at least a foot. Tomato plants, peppers, eggplant, maybe 8 inches. That's all you need. Okay. So that would be there. Let's see what we have here. This one I like. They took an old bench and put some sides on it, and you can just plant. They just did a lot of planting in there, and you can see you got cherry tomatoes, you got everything in there. Lettuces, cherry tomatoes, looks like some cabbages, everything's in there, and that's nice because you can make it rustic looking. It doesn't have to be as organized as if you're in like a garden situation, so you can make it loose, you can keep it whatever. This one too, I found this one, I've seen these. These are like they're made out of plastic, but they're made out of bioplastic that doesn't leach any chemicals or any of those BHTs or whatever they're from the plastic itself. And then modular, you can keep adding them on and going on. You can see they have a tomato plant in there, looks like a pepper plant, some ornamentals. So you can do that too, and you can do add-ons there as well. So you can have as little as 1 or 2, and then you can go up as long as you can go. Let me see, what else do I have? Yeah, and then you have the typical the terracotta. Terracotta is good, except I find that a lot of times it breaks if the temperature, if you leave it out in the free frost, it's going to break. They are very attractive. You can get plastic versions, but you always get oversized ones when you're growing for vegetables. And the bigger, you always want to have bigger. The roots want to have, they want to expand. They want to have room to expand out, and then you'll get a better yield. Another popular thing that people are buying now is these galvanized bins and these galvanized troughs. These were originally made for watering cattle and watering animals in the field. And they're round, or they come rectangular like this. And they're galvanized steel, so they're not going to rust. And they're deep, so you can plant them where you'll have a really perennial garden. So it becomes like a raised bed. But it's more of a permanent thing. Even though you're in a small space, it becomes a permanent part of your small space. Now, it's 2 feet deep. You don't have to put soil all the way down. You can throw wood and throw branches, break it up, cardboard, newspaper, and then the top layer should be about a foot. And that's where you have your soil. Otherwise, you're wasting good dirt all the way down. But then they also, because of the size, they give you a tremendous area to grow in. And they come in all shapes and sizes. You can get them at Tractor Supply is the place to go for them. And they're not that expensive, but they're really a good answer, and they're not toxic. So because they use them for animals, for drinking, for everything, feeding. So they won't rust. That's the nice part about it. They don't rust. And they're more of a perennial answer. So you'll have them every year. And I think my final picture is, this is indoors. Well, if you have to move things indoors, if you have a French doors or open area where they can get some light, and then you may have to put a grow light above that. So in the winter, you can enjoy, especially the herbs, you can keep them going. Things like that. That'll be really good. If you want to bring your dwarf trees in, you can do that too. So that's my picture presentation. Then what I'd like to do is stop sharing. I'm going to show some of the tools and a few other things if I could. All right, so I stopped the share. Now, one of the most important tools that a gardener can have, and my wife found this last year, and I can't believe I've never heard of this. I've never seen it before. It's called, can everybody see that? Clyde's Garden Planner. This is a tremendous tool that it's a slide rule for gardeners. How does it work? Well, there's this man, Clyde, who developed this thing, and he has a website, and I'll send the link so everybody can go to it. It's $6. It tells you all about planting, when to plant, when to harvest. For example, the way it works is it has a red line on there. I think you can see the red line. What's the red line? The red line is the last frost date. So you find the last frost date in your area, and I think probably around Pennington, I'm going to say it's around May 10th. I'm going to estimate that area, in that area. So I lined it up with May 10th, if everybody can see that. Then I look at tomatoes and I say, okay, when can I put my first tomato plants out? And I look and it'll say June 7th. That's when I plant my tomato plants. And then it'll say, when will I get my first tomato plants? And then I look August 9th. So it's, it comes in the right area, you know what I mean? So it estimates, and it does that with all the list that they have here. Then he also tells you the companion plants. Then he tells you about if you want, how far apart to plant the rows, how far apart to plant the plants from each other, planting by the phases of the moon. He's got it all covered, and it's $6, and it's a great tool. And then he has on the opposite side fall planting. So you just do the opposite. When is the first frost? Then you work backwards. And so for $6, you can get it on Amazon. And he does have an instruction sheet that comes with it. Also has a sheet of when the last frost dates are in all the major areas of the United States. So somewhere in there is, let's see what he has in New Jersey. New Jersey, they have Atlantic City, Newark, Somerville, and Trenton. So I guess you guys would be more by Trenton. April 30th is the last frost date in Trenton, and the first frost is October 20th. All right, because you're a little more south. So he gives you a guide, so you can work with that. There's also a book that I like, and it wasn't on my publication list because I have it on another list. And I think all gardeners should have this book. It's called Have More Plan. Even though you're working in a small space, this book has been in continuous production since 1941. It's about a couple, Ed and Carolyn Robinson, I'm sorry, who were living in Manhattan in the early 1940s, 1940, 41. And they were tired of the rat race and they wanted to get a place in the country. So they bought a little 3-acre homestead in Connecticut. And they tried to become as self-sufficient as possible while still maintaining, he still kept his job. And they raised a family and they lived on the land, but they did all this canning and jarring and egg production, everything they could do. They tried to be as self-sufficient as they could. This is like 1940, and they did a great job. And the book has been in continuous production since then, and you can get it on Amazon still for $10. So I really recommend that as a great book. So what I want to do now is I'm going to take a little time to show some of the hand tools that we use in our greenhouse, which would be the same as you using them in the small space garden. So I have a small toolbox here. And this has all the tools that we would tend to use in our small space garden. And I'll just take some out. If I can, yeah. What I'll do is I'll hold them up as I go over them. Put this down. Okay, I'll put this here. Oh, another essential tool is the old Farmer's Almanac. Get the original one, the what do you call it? The Robert Thomas one. That's the original Small Farmer's Almanac. They have some imitation ones, but this one's the best one that I like the most. I get that every year, and it's very accurate. So when you have a small garden, you want to have small tools. Like, for example, if I was working in the garden and I wanted to, I can't use a traditional hoe because I can't get there with the handle. I'm in a small space, right? So you get little hand ones that you can buy at Johnny's or Knowles or any garden supply house. You can get them, and they're inexpensive. This acts as a hoe to dig furrows. This can scrape weeds. And again, they're small because you're in small spaces. So you're not in a big garden where you're going to use the ones that we have behind me are more for traditional gardening outdoors in a big area in a raised bed or whatever you're working in, if you're working in a big garden. You want to have, again, same thing with rakes. You can't use a big rake, so you get yourself, they have small rakes that you can actually use to work, especially if you're working in a 5-gallon pail, or you're working in a tray or a large vase or whatever. This will help scrape all the material, break up the soil a little bit. So you want to use tools like that. If you're doing planting bulbs for ornamentals, or even planting bulbs, onion bulbs, whatever, you get a little bulb planter, makes the hole, and then you take the soil, pop the soil back in once you plant it. So you get a bulb planter. Then you have what's called also, this is called a dibble. What does this do? Makes the hole to plant in. If you're planting tomato bulb, if you're planting onions, or if you're planting particularly onions or garlic or shallots, you make the hole with this, and then you drop it in the hole, and then you just backfill the hole. And it's called the dibble. And you can actually set, by putting a little mark with a magic mark or whatever, it says, oh, plant 2 inches deep, then you just mark it and you can just plunge it in however far you want to do it. Having good shovels are important too. There are a few different types. You want to get a narrow shovel, especially if you're digging something you're putting in small bulbs or small plants. And then this one I like because this one has a built-in ruler on it. I don't know if you can see the ruler, but it does have a built-in ruler. And this way it helps you to figure, if you can't estimate the depth, the ruler will help you. And then of course, when you're doing wider areas, use a regular wide shovel. But these are about the sizes you would need in a small space type garden area. Always have a good pair if you're doing raspberries, raspberry, strawberries, and blackberry bushes. Have a good pair of snips with you. Get a nice pair of cutters. because you don't want to like tear anything. And scissors are okay, but scissors don't work. These are a little stronger because they can be a little tough. And you want to have a good pair of snips with you to do some pruning. So always do that, have one of those too. Then there are other tools that you can buy. This one's called the Cobra Head hoe. It's for breaking up the soil. If you want to make furrows, you can make furrows with it and plant all your lettuce seeds. Because when you plant lettuce seeds, you just go by, you just dribble it in, and this will help you to make the little furrow in your little box or whatever you're working in. So you have that. These little seed dispensers work really great. What you do is you take the top off and you fill it with seed, and then you find the hole that corresponds closest to the size of the seed, and then you just put the cover back on, and then you just tap it. Seeds come out, and it has a series of ridges, so the seeds all don't come flying out. They stop, and you can get 1 or 2 seeds to go in at a time. So have one of these little seed dispensers. So you always have like almost a little toolbox with you. Markers, very important. Row markers, and there's lots of them that we use at the farm. When we plant in the greenhouse, for example, little tabs. You buy these plastic ones, and once you're done with it, you clean them off with a little bleach. And this way you always know what you planted, because believe me, I've done that myself where we've planted something like, okay, what did we put here now? And then I have to wait for it to come up. And get yourself, they have garden markers too. They're like Sharpies for gardeners, and they work really well. They're impervious to any type of weather, and they last forever. So if you wanted to reuse these, you may just have to clean it with a little bit of bleach. So even markers, and keep yourself, I recommend too, keep a notebook of when you put things in, when you got your first harvest. So this way you kind of, and where you put it, so you kind of have an idea of like what you're doing, so because a lot of times you think, oh, I'll remember, but believe me, you won't, because you're doing a lot of different things, and so it's going to take a little time to figure things out. I also like to talk about, if you wanted to start your own plants indoors instead of going to a garden center and getting them, you can buy what's called a heat mat. A heat mat is, because one of the classic mistakes that people make, this is a heat mat. Okay, let me show the size here. There it is. Okay. What happens is people try to start their own tomatoes indoors, and then the plants come up, and then all of a sudden they're not growing as quick as they were, even though they put them in the window during the day and everything. But what's happening is at night, when they turn the heat down, the plant gets cold. One thing about seedlings, especially the very, very heat sensitive ones that like to grow in the heat, like tomatoes and corn and peppers and things like that, when they're germinating and when the seedlings are coming up, they want to be at a constant 70 degrees. So what this little heat mat does, it keeps it 24 hours a day at 70 degrees, and then you're going to get a good result. You can actually buy a thermostat to go with it, and you plug the mat into the thermostat into the wall, and you could set whatever temperature you want it to be, like 75 degrees, and it really works, especially when you're starting with seedlings, and you won't be disappointed, because that's the crucial part for is the seedling time, when they're first coming out of the ground. That's when they really need the care. That's why we don't do it ourselves. I send it across the street to the farmer, of course, who has a heated greenhouses. They're constantly at 70 something degrees at night. During the day, he keeps the temperature with a series of fans. So when I get my tomato seedlings back, they're all the same size and they're all healthy looking, because they were not exposed to any cold and any temperature fluctuations. It's the fluctuations that do the most damage. So that's what you have to watch out for. So get yourself some nice tools. You can find them in a good garden center, or you can look at Johnny's online. Johnny's, they're going to be a little expensive. I would go to Nolt's for some of the tools. Their prices are better. And you can find other ones. They're just the ones that we use. You can find other supply houses. There are plenty of them for tools and such. And you can do that too. Always have a good garden knife. This is a nice one. It's a Swiss one. It has a serrated edge for helping to cut the stems, because when a lot of people pull the tomatoes, don't pull the tomatoes off, cut it off, or use the snips to cut it off. Otherwise, you can damage the plant. So you always want to be careful with what you're doing. You don't want to get too, too rugged with everything. You want to kind of be delicate. So that's really pretty much my spiel and my talk. So if anybody has any questions, we can open it up to any questions anybody wants.
Thank you. I feel like I need you to come and personally oversee my garden at this point. But all of those recommendations were very helpful. We did have a couple questions that
Sure.
came in. While I'm looking those up, somebody did just ask if they could see the box of the heat pads again.
Oh, yeah.
That you recommended.
Yeah, it's written in French and English here, so make sure I hold up the English side. So yeah, it's just called it does 2 flats, which means it'll fit 2 little seedling flats of stuff. But it works. It's really, we've used it and it rolls out and you just, put it on, attach the thermostat. Really critical. People, it happens all the time. Oh, my tomatoes, they didn't, well, you had the temperature down to in the 60s at night, you even got colder. You want it 70, at least 70 degrees, And it has a thermostat. They need to see the thermostat too. It's by the same company, I think. Yeah, by the heat mat company, whatever it is. I can send you the link for this, Kirsten. I can send you.
Okay. Yeah, maybe you could send me the links for all of those things. And
I'm
I'll
going to send you a link. But the thing that really is a kick is the Clyde's garden planner. I can't believe it. That thing is great. So.
Another question was, are holes needed in the bottom of 5-gallon containers?
Yes, because you don't want to retain the moisture. It's just like the ground. If it's in the ground, it's got to go through, because you're only going to allow mold, mildew, and you're going to get root rot, and there's going to be a lot of problems. So you have to have drainage. You may have to put something underneath to catch it. If you don't want to ruin your deck or whatever, your patio, you may have to put some sort of a tray. I recommend to people to go to where they do central air conditioning kind of places. They have that safety tray that goes underneath in case it leaks in your attic. Get one of those trays and then put everything on top of that. Because that tray even has a little drainage hole that you can attach a piece of pipe, and if you have a way to shed it. So I always recommend that.
Okay, another question was, any recommendations? I know, especially in Pennington, our deer here are crazy. And so they need a lot of deterrent. Any recommendations on that?
It's really, if you go to Terhune Orchards, what do they have? They have this big fence around the whole property. That's about it. You can put fencing. There are some, but they're only temporary fixes. There are sprays you can use, the hot wax spray made from hot pepper, but that's only temporary. When it rains, you're going to have to do it again. There's even the one thing that we found that was really good and was recommended by one of the ag extensions was a product called Deerskram, and it's made out of dried blood. So when you spread it around, they think there's predators around, so then they don't come around. But what happens when it rains, you got to do it again, and it's not cheap, but it does work. Unfortunately, fencing is the only other way. There is a way around fencing too. If you do, a lot of people don't like the idea that they have to go so high, like 6 feet. Well, you may not have to go that high. You can follow. I had a friend of mine who did this in Bedminster. He has a farm in Bedminster, and they told the ag extension. I was there that day too. Said what you can do is you put your fence, but you put a line of bushes in front of the fence, because the deer, when they come, they need that final jump to get in. They have to do that final leap. They set themselves up to jump over. But if you have a row of bushes in front, they can't get that spring to get over there. So, but then again, you're spending money on bushes, you're spending money on the fence, and I've had people who tried everything, flashing. I have a neighbor here in Cedar Grove. He's got flashing lights at night, and the deer just doesn't stop them. It's meant to stop the deer. And I see these flashing lights going on and off. It's just so many deer now. That's the problem, and what happened is we've created a great environment for them, like the suburban setting is great. They have their, it's like you opened up like a banquet to them. They can get any kind of ornamental flower they want. They can get vegetables. They can eat the leaves. They can, so they've had that before, and we've removed a lot of the predators. So we don't have that many predators anymore. You have deer hunting in New Jersey, but it's not enough. It's not enough. And it's just overpowering. Fortunately, up by a farm, people say to me, "Oh, don't you have a deer problem up there?" And we don't, because first of all, the deer, there's not that many houses around. There's hunting. There's predators. You got bobcats. We got coyotes. We have coyote wolf hybrids up there too. So we've got bald eagles. We've got hawks. We've got everything. So we got hunters. So the deer tend to like stay in the woods. They don't really come out, But the only way is 6-foot fencing. That's it. That's the only thing I can recommend. I do have a sheet on it from Rutgers. I'll send that. It has some recommendations, but nothing's cheap. Nothing's cheap to do.
True.
And that's a shame.
I have a crazy dog, so that is helpful because they do
Dogs
not
are helpful.
around.
Yeah.
All right. And then another question is asking if you could tell us more about lighting. So it says you briefly mentioned that before, like LEDs.
Yeah, you want to get you want to get a grow light, and grow lights. The place that I would go is the one I recommended in Connecticut, the Grower Supply. They have a lot of selection of grow lights and different sizes and different configurations. They'll kind of look like fluorescent setups, except they're made out of LEDs now, which don't use a lot of electricity, and the spectrum is great. That it really works and will give it the UV lighting that it needs to simulate sunlight. So any kind of grow light is good. So look in those catalogs. I would go Grower Supply, and you can call them. They are very helpful. That you tell them what you want to do, and they'll give you the light that they recommend for it.
All right, 2 more questions that we have so far. If we're missing anything, I know not everyone's asked a question, so if you do have a question, you can put it into the Q&A. But one of the last ones we have is someone was asking about lily bulbs, if you would plant them now or in autumn. That's a flower, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I think now you might be getting almost a little, but I think now you're still okay. And but I wouldn't wait any much longer. And then again in the fall, I would do it. But your window's closing because it's still in April. You should be in already. But you still could do it. And if you're doing it in a small space, I think so. But then otherwise wait till the fall if you're not sure, because it might be a little bit late now for that. Because they like to go in early, because then by Easter they're up, everything's up already, So most people do it the year before. And when you do garlic, you do it the year before too. Garlic, October, you plant your garlic, and you get your garlic in June, So you do that too. Same thing with the lilies, Most bulb plants you do the year before. Like in the fall, and then boom, they come up in the spring. But it might be a little too late now. You could try it.
All right. Well, I think that's all that we have for questions at this point. So thank you very much for joining us, Anthony. Thank you so much. I feel like I'm going to take a lot of this knowledge home to my own garden. So thank you.
Yes, and anybody can ask me questions. You'll have my email. They want to reach out to me directly, including yourself. If I can help you in any way, I will be happy to do that. So,
great. All right. Well, and like we said too, I will send out a follow-up email after this with all of the resources and some of the links to the products that you were talking about, so that everybody can have that. So before we go, I just want to let everyone know about some other things that are happening at our library this spring. So some upcoming programs for families that we have include our weekly outdoor story times. We also have an interactive community helpers game going on, and the fire truck will be visiting on May 7th. And adults can also look forward to programs on plant-based cooking, the art of Georgia O'Keeffe, and a class on preserving family photos. So just to make sure you are up to date on everything that's going on, you can stop by the library, of course, or you could also check out our website, which is penningtonlibrary.org. And if you do happen to miss a program, or you'd like to share a program with a friend that you've seen and participated in, you can find us on our YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube and search for Pennington Public Library. And this program will also be on YouTube. So if you enjoyed it, pass it on to a friend. All right, so thank you everyone again for coming, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the day, and everybody go out there and get growing, okay?